to this edition of Copic Mondays. Haley and I have a new technique to share with you today. Today we're going to be making our version of paper flowers. So you'll see this one is the rolled type of flower, and this one is more of the name brand style of flower that you're used to seeing in the stores. We're going to do this not only using our Copic airbrush, but also using our Cricut expression. A number of the Cricut cartridges have a scallop circle die cut available on them. This, for example, is on Accent Essentials, but looking through I found that Sweet Treats, Paisley, Forever Young, and a number of others also have versions of a scallop circle. You can use any one of these that you like in your Cricut machine. You're going to load your mat, and you want to cut a variety of scallop circles from 3/4 of an inch up to 1.5 inch, depending on how big you want your flower. As you can see on my scratch paper here, I have a number of scallop circles that I cut out using my Cricut cartridge, and I lightly airbrushed them with my Copic markers, just to kind of so they would stand out a little bit better on this white sheet of paper. When we're all done, our flower is going to look like this little guy. First things first, I started out with my stylus, and I just made a score mark coming down from each one of the scallops. And it's very difficult to see here, but just go through here and make a nice little score mark. It helps it so it's going to fold a little bit easier. Then I took my pencil with an eraser and I just kind of folded it up along to crinkle my paper. For this project I used a textured cardstock, similar to your coordinations. I'm not really sure where I got this one. It was kind of some leftovers in my pile. And then I took my stylus again. I like working it so it looks a lot more aged, and this is really up to you how much you want to work with your edges before you start. But I liked mine looking really shabby and kind of that shabby chic look. For the center, you can either use your stylus like this, anything with a paintbrush, anything that has a small end on it. What this is going to be our center, so we're going to curl that up really tight. And you want to make the center of your rose. And then I also took, before I put it together, and I went back and I just kind of bent over the tops a little bit so it would just have a little bit more dimension to it, and then I rolled it back onto my stylus. After I pulled it off my stylus, I just kind of shaped it a little bit with my fingers, used my fingernail to pull this apart just a little bit, and then I crimped it about half of the way up. Now in some of the videos that I watched when learning how to do this, some of the ladies took and they actually just folded this piece up. Now I thought it was rather long, so I took my trusty Fiskars scissors and I cut off the bottom bit before I put it into my next layer. For my next layer, I started with the piece the exact same size as my last one. I scored along the edges again, then took my pencil eraser and rolled my piece around the pencil eraser. And what I'm after here is I'm forming the center next set of petals from my center around my flower. Please excuse my darling puggle who has decided to bark through this video at our goats, which we've only had forever, but he thinks that they're intruders tonight for some reason. Now once I got my leaves or my petals all scrunched up and kind of pull them back apart, and then I put a little drop of any adhesive that you like. I like the mono because I like to be able to use it, move it around for a little bit after I put the adhesive in, but you can also use quick dry paper adhesive, whatever works for you. Even hot glue gun would work for this project. I used to always use my hot glue gun for everything. And then I liked mine smashed and real shabby, so I pushed my center down in there and then just pinched it closed again to form the next layer. And it looks kind of funky at first. You're going to fold your little layers around and get them exactly where you want them. So you can play with this. I'm sorry my fingernails are in the way more than you can really see what I'm doing. But I just keep pinching it until it forms a flower that I like. And then I go on to my next layer. So I repeated the process of scoring and wrapping it around my pencil eraser again, and then dropped my center inside. For this layer I used the next size up on my scallop circle. Now for this project I started at 3/4 of an inch, and then I went to 1 inch, and then up to 1 1/4. So that was the way that I cut all of my layers for this project. But you get the idea. You just keep working and moving your layers around and forming the rows that you like. Now it's funny, when I did mine the first time I really didn't like the way it looked when I first started, and then after I let it sit and I played with it a little bit more, I really liked the way that it turned out. So don't get discouraged at first if it doesn't look exactly like what you want. It does take, as it dries and it you pull it back out, it starts to look much more like the Prima, or name brand I should say, roses. We don't want to say the exact brand because that would be a bad thing. Now that is my flower just with 3 layers. So you see you can get a lot of dimension and a lot of texture with just 3 layers of your flower. And again, I just had lightly sprayed this with my airbrush, but I'm going to show you what we're going to do after we're all done here. So that is my first flower. Now what I did was I took another cut from my Cricut that looked more like a star flower, and that's what we're going to end up using for our leaves for the background. And you can put leaves on it if you want, or you can leave them off. You can add them when you put it on your project, however you'd like to do it. I thought it'd be kind of neat to make up a bunch of these and stick them in my drawer, so I just had them for projects. And do them in white, and then that way I could airbrush them in whatever color marker I have. This is my one with just a light airbrush on it so you could see it better while I'm making it. And this one I went back and airbrushed it after it was done, and then opened the flower up a little bit more. And you can see how that looks with the leaves on the background there. Now for our second flower, we're going to make this cabbage rose. Now these are really popular. I've been seeing them on a lot of pages and projects in the magazines, and this is probably the easiest thing in the world to make. Okay, for this rose I just cut out about a 3.5 inch circle using my Cricut, and then I am going to just use it as a template because I wanted that really shabby look to my roses. And I am just cutting as quick and as crazy as possible around the edge of this circle. And you can tell I am really not taking my time and trying to make a perfect circle. Now I'm just going to start at one point and just start making a spiral. And you can do this as fat or as skinny. And again, I am not taking any care whatsoever in my cutting of this flower. I am just cutting like crazy. Now this center here, you want to do about the size of your glue dot, because that's how we're going to hold our flower together. We're going to put a glue dot right here. So now, after doing all that, you just take a paintbrush, or you can take your stylus, whatever you have. Just start at the middle. And I kind of did this one at an angle so I could get a hold of it, because I had a hard time. I am not doing really good with having fake fingernails, but my husband likes them and he says they look good, so I'm trying to craft with fake nails and I am not really good at it. So after I started it, I had to go back and pick it up because I need it to be in line. Sorry you can't see that, I'm kind of off camera there. Let me go back a little bit so it's easier to see what I'm doing. And then I'm just going to wrap this around my paintbrush. Again, no time, no effort, just wrap it around. This is what's so fun about this project. You turn out with something so cool and you give it really zero effort. Now this would be also a good one if you wanted to use hot glue. This would be a really good project to use hot glue on, because when you get to the end here, what I did on my one that I showed you for the example is I just kind of bent this like that, and then I kind of held this. I didn't really worry about it. Did end up letting it go, and I bent this back a little bit. Then I took one of my big glue dots that fit that size, and I just stick it on there and kind of let this come around and just let it go. And keep your center however much you want to let it go. You can let it go a little bit like that, or you can let it go a lot and make it a lot bigger. And then wherever it gets to where you like it, and if you don't like it, you do have a little bit of playtime until you push really hard in your glue dot, and then push it down, and that's it. You have made yourself one of those great cabbage looking spiral roses. And now you can take same thing with the other one. If you want to play with it and bend it around and give it more of a shabby look, you can. If you don't like it, if it's too small, you want to make it bigger, you can let it go and let it get bigger. Let me show you how that works, since I haven't stuck it down really hard yet. You can open it up more if you want a really big one, and just kind of let it spin out. But I kind of like it a little bit tighter, so I'm going to do it the way I like here, where it's a little bit tighter like that. And then just push it down in there, and that forms your base and your center. And if you want to, same thing with this, you can cut some leaves. These are a little bit small, but you can cut some leaves and put a leaf behind it, whatever you want to do. So now that we have 2 different types of flowers done, let's airbrush them with our Copic airbrush. Okay, so I just put a little bit of adhesive, temporary adhesive, onto one of my scrap pieces of cardboard that came out of this cereal box, I don't know what, but some type of packing. And then I loaded up my Copic marker, and I wanted to do this one in red. And so I am just going to lightly spray in my red. Now you can add as much or as little as you want. I'm trying to tilt this so that you can see how it's getting all the way down inside there. And then we have our little bit of white, so it looks more like a real rose. And we can do the same thing on the little one here. Just kind of lightly airbrush. Now remember, you are only limited by the colors of Copic markers that you have, because you can make these any color you want. That's why I was thinking this would be such a great thing. I'm going to make a whole bunch of these in red, or in white, sorry, painting with red and thinking at the same time. Make a whole bunch of them in white, and then I'm going to put them in my drawer, and then that way when I have a project and I color it and I want it to match whatever I've colored, all I've got to do is shoot it with my markers that I've used. And there is my finished product. For this I used 2 different colors of red. I'm hoping that's showing up really good, just to give it a little bit of depth. But you can do anything you want. These can be blue, pink, purple, green, whatever. You can add as many colors or as few colors as you want. You can spray your white paper before you put your rose together, or spray it afterwards. But either way, you've got a totally custom rose to fit whatever project you're making. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time on Copic Mondays.